And so I appreciate your patience with this. And I would like to go ahead and take us right on into our keynote. So I'm very excited about this. I'm going to pop our speakers' pictures up here right now. And we have first, I want to introduce you to Stefan Ugelid. And Stefan is a doctor in, I think he's your doctorate in physical therapy?
Yeah.
Yeah, physical therapy. He's a physical therapist, doctorate in physical therapy. He is a Guild certified Feldenkrais practitioner. He has done a lot with yoga, and originally from Sweden. He's currently on the advisory board of the International Association of Yoga Therapists and the board of directors for Yoga Alliance and several other editorial journal boards. And he edited a book called The Yoga Therapy Theory and Practice, and as co-author of a couple of other yoga books as well. And then we have Krish Kresge, despite the name that's showing up down at the bottom there that says that she is Stefan. So we can tell the difference between them clearly. That's good. And Krish is a Guild certified Feldenkrais practitioner. She's also in the Anat Ben-Yael neuromovement method for children, and she has studied Ruthie Alon's work in movement intelligence, and she combines all these to have a very vibrant practice in, I think, in Washington, D.C. Do I have that right, Krish? And she's also an actor, producer, and director. And, you know, there's some people that give me a run for my money and how busy they are. Krish is one of those. She's one of those. She's very busy. So we want to welcome both of you here today. And you got to mute yourselves. Unmute yourself there. Yeah. And this is going to be their new book that they're editing that's coming out. So the Feldenkrais method from Handspring Publishing, called Learning Through Movement, with an incredible array of Feldenkrais practitioners who are, sorry, I got my hand over their names, that are authors in this book. So I'm very excited to have you all here to kick us off and, you know, to talk a little bit maybe first about why this book, why now?
So, you know, first of all, I mean, thanks to Cynthia and Arlene for the years that you put this on and organized the Feldenkrais Summit. It's really astonishing, and welcome to all the participants. I mean, we're incredibly honored to keynote and open this summit. You know, there are 21, I think it's at 24,000 in attendance now. It's unbelievable, and I think from that we can conclude that we are looking into the future and we're seeing a growing interest in the Feldenkrais method. And I think the Feldenkrais method will be an essential part of the health and wellness of individuals and communities here. But let's face it, the last 2 months have really changed the way we look at the future as well as the present. If we had done this summit 2 months ago, this keynote would have been a very different thing, and I think a lot of us would be in a very different place. At this point, kids are home from school, parents are home, parents are teachers as well as trying to work from home. We're glued to the telly trying to figure out when this stay in place will stop. You know, we're wondering about our jobs, clients, businesses, and really about our sanity. And we have learned one new word that is called Zoom fatigue. You know, it'll be the word of the year, I guarantee you, when they name the word of the year in December. Hopefully me and Chris will not contribute to your increased Zoom fatigue here. But we want to share a little bit about the book and also about how the Feldenkrais can really increase your ability to tolerate this uncertainty and changes that we dwell with within us right now, as well as it will be here on the other side of the coronavirus, if there is another side of it, which there probably will be. You know, I hear some people say we should have been better prepared for the virus and so forth, and different healthcare systems, but you know, that's probably not realistic because there aren't enough resources to be prepared for everything. You know, it would cost a tremendous amount of money. And how do we know if the next big thing is a virus, an earthquake, tsunami, or, you know, the climate change that is coming sooner or later? We don't know what's going to happen, but we know that something is going to happen sooner or later, and we need to be prepared for it. but again, we can only put so many resources into preparation. It's kind of like, I used to live in Arkansas, and you can't expect people in Arkansas to be prepared for snowfall. Now I live in Rochester, New York, and we're all prepared for it up here, right? There are only so many resources. We need to figure out, where do we put the resources here? So if we can't plan to have resources for these kind of unpredictable events, what can we do? And I think what we need to do is turn towards a method that will move us towards well-being and optimal functioning, that will make us more biologically fit, so that we can live with this uncertainty, so that we know when the next disaster will happen, we'll get through it intact. And at the core of it, the Feldenkrais method is such a method. So let's look at some of these concepts and how the Feldenkrais can then assist with well-being, biological fitness, and some robustness here. First, I want to just define biological fitness. Jeff Haller, I think he was the one who first mentioned this concept to me, and he says it's a functioning in any environment or context. So it's more than just a muscular or cardiovascular fitness. This is different. This is how we can create options where we can increase our biological fitness and be functional in new and shifting contexts. I think it was something that Moshe talked about too, and I think that Cynthia talked about it too, about the flexibility of the brain, the flexibility of our actions. And also robustness. Robustness is the ability of tolerating perturbations, irritants, disruptors. And we see robustness, and they talk about it in a lot of different avenues and areas here. Computer robustness, for example, is an operating system that doesn't crash. Economic robustness is an economic system that doesn't crash because of any kind of waves in the system here. And biologically, we talk about the ecological system being robust. But we also need those irritants. Our immune system, our digestive system, unless we really get those irritants and we learn how to deal with them, we really don't develop really well. We don't develop our immune system, our digestive system, and so forth. And I think Moshe, through the movement system, he did it through the movement system. He did put some irritants in there, but he did it in a very, very intelligent way. If we have the biological fitness and the robustness, that will lead us to wellness. So then the question is, how can we as Feldenkrais method educators create this robustness and biological fitness? Well, the answer is pretty simple from a Feldenkrais practitioner perspective. It's by practicing and living our awareness through movement lessons. The Feldenkrais method can really build this robustness and fitness in ways that really no other method can. If you really look at how Moshe tied together these awareness through movement sequences, he did it in a way that was really coherent to allow for the nervous system to create options that will lead to robustness and fitness. And that will allow us to act in a multitude of ways. But he did it in a way that made it coherent to the nervous system. And I think we have to realize that, because there are so many approaches that are talking about, we're adding variations to movements, we're working with the nervous system and so forth. But variations itself does not build robustness. And actually variations can lead to chaos and confusion as well as robustness, unless they're well integrated. And Moshe really understood this. He understood how to make these movements, these awareness through movement lessons, coherent in a sense, so the nervous system could really develop and make us robust here. So by practicing and living awareness through movements together here, we will become biologically fit. We will be robust, and we'll be able to thrive in a changing world. And this sounds really easy, right? Just do your ATMs and we're good. Well, here's a big concern. We have struggled to define what we're doing. The Feldenkrais method has really struggled to define what we're doing. We're vague about what we do. We're difficulty in describing what happens during a lesson. But people leave an awareness through movement lesson, and they go, something happened, but it was so gentle. I don't know what it was. It wasn't stretching. It wasn't strengthening, but something really cool happened. And then they talk to their neighbor about it, and they really have no idea how to describe it. Because the neighbor will go, were you stretching? No. We're strengthening? No. We're just like moving. All right, so we don't have what I call the scaffolding to explain what happens. The language, the scaffolding in our nervous system, in our models, in our concepts. But now we have that chance to do that. Now we have the language, I think, to build that scaffolding. And by using the words robustness and biological fitness, so that we can adapt to the changes and the uncertainty that's happening in the world around us. I think people understand that now. 2 months ago, maybe not. But I think that now people will get it if we can start building a scaffolding around that. The other day, I was listening to an awareness through movement by Larry Goldfarb. And he said something about how the Feldenkrais method compares to other methods. And it says, in the Feldenkrais method, we learn to do the same thing in different ways. In other methods, we learn to do different things in the same way. And it was just something that really struck me. And then I started thinking, you know, how many things can we do in different ways? And Moshe talked about this too, that we had to do things in a multitude of different ways. So I think once we emerge on the other side of the times we're in now, we will have to learn to do the same thing in different ways. We still have to do the same thing. We have basic needs. We need to take care of each other. We need to take care of our health and so forth. But we need to do them in a different way than the way we do them now. We don't want to do more things in the same way, but it's the ability to do things in a variety of ways and in a different way, so that we can really face the uncertainty of then what is to come, because things will change, right? There's no doubt about it. So as Feldenkrais educators, we know that change will come, whether we like it or not. We need to be ready for this change, and we need to help people create their own biological fitness and robustness. That's what we do. And we're finally to the point in evolution where people realize the importance of building this robustness and biological fitness. So let's use the Feldenkrais method to teach others to do the same thing in different ways, thereby building this biological fitness and robustness that will allow all of us to live life to the fullest, even as we're facing this uncertain future. So now I will turn it over to Krish, and she will share a glimpse of who Moshe was and how the Feldenkrais method fits into the bigger framework here of somatic education. So it's all yours, Krish.
Thank you, Stefan. Thank you so much for that nice introduction. Welcome to everyone. Welcome to somatic practitioners, other practitioners. Those of you who don't even know anything about Feldenkrais, this is your first exposure. We're here to maybe point the way to and spark some enthusiasm. Feldenkrais practitioners and trainers, assistant trainers, understand just how big this method is and recommit to doing it to your fullest. Somatic education is concerned with the learning process of the living body, the soma, as it acquires awareness through movement within the environment. And Moshe Feldenkrais was a giant in the field of somatic education. It actually came out of the human potential movement in the 60s, and the concept of cultivating the extraordinary potential believed to lie largely untapped in most people. He often referred to this potential as the changeability of the brain in his teaching, and it's what we now call neuroplasticity. Turns out he was in fact one of the first neuroplasticians. He said, what we consider possible or impossible has nothing to do with reality, because we behave like small babies having a huge brain and only using a small bit of it. We distinguish Feldenkrais from other somatic education systems by focusing on learning through movement and the brain. It is not a science, even though its founder was an accomplished scientist. It's first and foremost a learning method. Maybe this definition might help you. Feldenkrais is an embodied process of learning through movement with awareness, leading to improvement of the self-image, coordination, and action. We inquire into our experience in this way that we learn the Feldenkrais method. In fact, we do not learn from our experience, we learn our experience, says Anat Banyel. A little bit about Moshe for those of you who don't know his life story, and maybe even those of you who already do, just to appreciate just what an extraordinary time that he lived in, a tumultuous time. And he was always really curious and intrigued to find ways to enhance his own body's capacity to survive, to thrive under very difficult conditions. And his life events brought him to the creation of his method. He was born in Russia, in the small town of Slavuta, in 1904, into a well-educated family. His father was a rabbi, many discussions at home, questioning. And then as a young boy of 14, he left home, encouraged by his family to leave and to emigrate to Palestine to escape pogroms, war, famine, all the horrible realities of World War I. During this long journey, much of it on foot, he endured hardship, fighting, was often in great danger. And he honed his survival skills and his strength, eventually becoming a freedom fighter, as well, of course, as an accomplished athlete. He supported himself on this long journey, and when he arrived in Palestine, by doing hard physical labor. He would carry bricks, he would carry water, but he also supported himself by tutoring mathematics and physics. A truly self-educated man, at least until he went to university. During a soccer match in 1929 in Palestine, he injured his left knee, an event that was actually going to be the source of his ingenuity and his self-observation. He said much later, "That knee and soccer business was a crucial event in my life. If it were not for that, I don't think I'd be doing the work I'm doing now at all." Feldenkrais studied later on at the Sorbonne in Paris, and he got a doctorate of science in electrical engineering and physics. And while in Paris, he met Jigoro Kano, the founder of judo, and became one of Europe's first judo black belts, a considerable feat at that time. This seminal moment really changed the course of Feldenkrais' life. He began to train his own body rigorously according to the principles of judo. In 1935, when Frédéric Joliot and his wife Irene won the Nobel Prize for Chemistry, Feldenkrais was their lab assistant. What a diverse life, what a breadth of experience. And by the way, he spoke 6 languages fluently. When the Nazis came to Paris in 1940, Feldenkrais escaped to Scotland with top secret documents from the lab that he'd been working in. And he was involved in anti-submarine defense systems throughout the rest of World War II. And it was during this time that he was handicapped by his knee injury, which had been further aggravated during his escape from France. There were no knee replacements, certainly no competent knee replacements in those days. But he found the means within himself to recover, to improve his own ability to move and to function. That was one of his greatest achievements. The work that he did with himself demonstrated the capacity that we all have for self-initiated learning and improvement, no matter what our condition or age. Think about that. We have this possibility to improve no matter what condition or age. And he went on to say later, there are no limits to our improvement. Many of you know this quotation. And I love that quotation because I see evidence of it every day when I'm teaching in my classes and also in myself. That one day the movement is difficult, the beginning of the lesson, the movement is unthinkable. And then through this rigorous paying attention, moving slowly, miracles happen, as earlier both Cynthia and Stefan said. So Moshe returned to Israel in 1950 and began to teach his method, creating hundreds of lessons that he taught to groups of students, developing the processes that we now know as awareness through movement and functional integration. The lessons also were taking place in a street in Tel Aviv called the Alexander Yanai Street. And of course, we call them the Alexander Yanai lessons. Feldenkrais trained his first group of 15 practitioners in Tel Aviv in 1968. He was then invited to come to the US to present his work. And in 1975, He began a training group of 65 people in San Francisco. His final training was in 1980 in Amherst, Massachusetts, with 220 students. And many of both of the trainings are still working as practitioners, assistant trainers, and of course, trainers today. Moshe died in 1984 as an indirect result of injuries he suffered in a 1981 automobile accident in Zurich. The work he did with himself demonstrated his capacity we have for self-initiated and self-referential learning. He taught us that we can learn and improve at any age and any condition using the tool of movement with attention. A brain without a body couldn't think, he said. I want to hand it back over to Stefan now to talk about how our book came into being. Go for it, Stefan.
Right. So this book came into being through a meeting with Handspring Publishing Company. I had met with them for years at the annual meeting of the International Association of Yoga Therapists. We had talked about me writing a book on core training based on a DVD I made years ago called Smart Core Training. I had a signed contract, but I was tired. I was exhausted. I had written or co-written 3 books in the last few years. I tried, I just couldn't do it. So one year we sat down for lunch, Serena and Andrew from Handspring Publishing, and I said, I can't do it. So they said, well, how about if you edit a book instead? That would be much easier. Well, knowing now, editing a book is not any easier than writing it, but it sounded like a good idea at the time. And what really sounded like a good idea was, they said, how about a book on the Feldenkrais method? So I said, oh, that sounds fabulous. So they suggested that I find a co-editor to make it easier on me. And they suggested that I ask Krish to co-edit. And I was really excited about that because I know Krish and I respect her work. So just think about it. A publishing company, a major publishing company asked for a book on the Feldenkrais method. I mean, usually you have to go out and you have to write these proposals, and here a publishing company actually came out and asked for it. That means that there's an interest, there's a growing awareness of the Feldenkrais method, and we need to capitalize on that right now. So me and Chris, we sat down, we wrote a book proposal, but you know, all projects of this size, they just take a lot longer than you expect. Came up with the title, we came up with different contributors, we got it figured out, we got it lined up, ready to take off, and things happen. Someone backs out, something else happens, but you know, we're Feldenkrais practitioners, so we have this robustness and biological fitness. So we just kept plowing on. You know, after many rewrites, we got the book proposal approved, and we even had a timeline. And the timeline said that April 30th, 2019, we should have the first draft from all contributors. And amazingly enough, a few of them got it in on time. Most did not. Most had really realistic timelines. Me and Chris clearly did not have realistic timelines. So thanks to Chris and Handspring Publishers, they were patient and we got it all in. I don't have that patience, but they do. Along the way, we lost a few contributors, we gained a few, we added chapters, because through contacting all these brilliant contributors and practitioners, we realized how big the Feldenkrais method is, of areas we could not even imagine that people were working in, and how incredibly rich the method is. And I think one of the reasons it's so rich is because people come to the Feldenkrais method, and many times it's their second career. So they really have a knowledge from some other background. It's not like you go from high school to university and so forth, but there's a richness in the method. And Moshe was really right when he said everyone should use their own handwriting. And we know now from working with all these contributors that people are really using their own handwriting, their own language. And again, I mean, I think the most amazing thing for me about working on this book is to realize we have such a wealth of knowledge in our community. It's amazing. We are really doing the same thing in different ways. But, you know, if you're listening to this, Larry, also know that we are doing different things in different ways too. We know how to do almost everything in very, very different ways. So how did we choose the authors in the chapters here? Well, the biggest problem with choosing contributors to a book like this is there are so many great practitioners out there. The best thing is there are so many great contributors out there doing the work. So, you know, we contacted some people, and if we didn't contact you, it's just because when you work with a publisher, they say you have so many words in this book. We could have written 200,000-300,000 words and it would have been like, you know, huge, but we can't do that, you know. So if we didn't contact you, you know, it's because we couldn't have everyone write in it. We also realized Feldenkrais practitioners are incredibly generous people. Almost everyone we contacted, they said, oh, I'd love to write. And trust me, there's no money in this. The few that couldn't write, that we contacted, they had a really good reason for why they couldn't. The timing wasn't right, but they all apologized. They felt sad that the timing wasn't right. So we had a lineup, and then contributors said, well, how about this person? How about that person? Mm-hmm. So we realized the Feldenkrais practitioners also like to highlight the work that the others do. We like to highlight that, you know, it's not a selfish thing that I'm doing all this great work, but it's like, look what this person is doing and that person is doing, you know. That's the kind of spirit we need to infuse into everyone that we give a lesson to. Let's help each other. So Chris will talk a little bit about how some contributors were kind of sent our way, more or less.
Okay, thank you, Stefan. It was really interesting. We obviously had our word count and we had certain limitations, but nevertheless, I got a call from Eleanor Silverstein one day and she said, Krishna, she said, we've absolutely got to get Linda Tellington-Jones into this book. I said, it's too late, Eleanor, it is too late. She goes, no, we have to try. I said, I don't think it's gonna happen. Nevertheless, I called Linda and indeed she was very ready to write a chapter. So that's how that chapter came along. Then right around in November, beginning of December, Annette Baniel called me and she says, you've really got to have Eilat Almagor write a chapter for the book. She has done amazing work and research into Feldenkrais in schools. And, you know, they both work with children. So I tried. At first I said no, and I tried. And indeed, Eilat has written a chapter with a co-author on Feldenkrais in schools. So we got lucky. Another person that helped us tremendously was our great trainer, Ivan Joly. He suggested that we contact Matt Zeppelin to talk about the differences between Feldenkrais and other methods of somatic education. So that worked out. Thank you, Ivan. Thank you. Back to you, Stefan.
So as you can tell, this was really a community effort. And I believe that what we need today and what we're going to need in the future is community. We need community building. The other day here in Rochester, it was actually sunny and warm, which is really unusual for upstate New York. You know, when the first spring day comes, we all go outside. And this year, when people have been isolated for 4 or 5 weeks, there were people that gathered in driveways. I mean, they sat 6 feet from each other. But the joy of being out in the community, seeing your neighbors, it was absolutely astonishing. You could feel the joy of joining your neighborhood again. And I think that, you know, this book is really a work of the whole Feldenkrais community, of our collective brilliance here. And the joy that we like to share our knowledge with each other and with the world. Because as Feldenkrais practitioners, we feel like we're a community. We know each other from trainings, from classes, from workshops. You know, if you observe your students, they really enjoy seeing each other when they attend the classes. They hang out afterwards and want to chit chat, and you know, it's this great community. But how do we make it bigger, and how do we make it stronger? As Cynthia said in the introduction, I'm also involved with the yoga community. There are 30 million people practicing yoga in the United States. And you can tell who's part of their community because they, you know, they have their little yoga mats and the yoga clothes and this and that. We don't have that. We you know, I mean, we can't say, oh, look at this person, how they walk. I bet they're doing the pelvic clock, you know. And we can talk about how cool the pelvic clock was, or how we really enjoy finding our feet and extremities when we did the artificial floor. But reality is we need something that shows, oh, that's the Feldenkrais practitioner, that's the Feldenkrais community. So when our countries and towns and neighborhoods open up again, how can we build a recognizable community of Feldenkrais practitioners and students and so forth? Because I know we can do it. The book is proof of that. The book is proof that we can build community. We're excited about building a community. The summit is a proof of that. I mean, that's not an accident that there's 24,000 people on this year.
No, it's absolutely not an accident, is it?
No. I mean, we just crave this connection, and especially in times like this, we realized, maybe we didn't realize 2 months ago how important connection and community is, but we do it now. I mean,
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So I want to just point out who's talking here, because people are asking about names. We've been listening to Stefan Egeled. Can you say your last name for me? Because I'm Egeled. Egeled. And Krish Kresge. Did I get it right, Krish?
Yes, beautiful.
Okay, wonderful. Because, if this is your first time at a summit, you will this will be a surprise to you, but to nobody else it will be. I'm really bad with pronouncing names. So I like to be very flexible in my name enunciation. Apparently it's not good, but it's something I have trouble with. Okay, so we have got lots of questions from people, and I think there's some really good questions. And I just first want to say the book is actually not available yet. We thought when we booked this particular duo here, this dynamic duo that's just done a fabulous job, we thought that it might be available. We knew it was going to be tight, but it's not ready yet. Do you think maybe it might not even be till August, perhaps? Or is that what you're thinking?
You can take that, Chris.
I think because of COVID, it's probably not going to be until the fall. So look for it in the fall. Yeah. Yeah,
that makes sense. That would be. And it does have 25 different authors. I mean, many of these authors have actually been members of past summits or in the current summit. So you'll get a chance to hear some of them. They're phenomenal, I think, thinkers, and not just in the Feldenkrais world, but in our time, they're phenomenal thinkers. I think Feldenkrais himself was one of the most phenomenal thinkers that was not well known, and I hope we can make his learning theory, as Irene Lyon likes to keep referring to it, is as learning theory, because that is what it is, better known. We have a few questions. Can I ask some of those of you all?
They might be answered. I might say a few things about the authors. Maybe that will be helpful. Questions first. It's up to you, Cynthia.
Go ahead. Say something. We need to move on to questions because we're already at an hour. But go ahead and say something about the authors.
Okay. Well, I wanted to just mention the various contributors. In fact, those of whom are already presenting at the summit is of course Larry Goldfarb, who wrote a chapter on teaching the Feldenkrais method. Jeff Haller, who wrote a chapter on the importance of learning, and there are many case studies in the books which are really helpful, and they make understand the clients how we work in so many powerful ways. Ruthie Alon, a giant, although she's not at this summit, she was last year, one of Moshe's original students. Lavinia Plonka wrote a chapter on creativity. She's one of your co-presenters. We have chapters on musicians with Andrew Gibbons, Marina Gilman, and then of course Eleanor, who wrote a chapter about her life, her association with Moshe and her mother's, and a beautiful, tender insights into those moments of growing up. Moti Nativ wrote a chapter on martial artists, and there's surely nobody alive who's done more research on the life of Feldenkrais than Moti Moshe. So Stefan also wrote a couple of chapters, one on yoga and one on the rehabilitation of orthopedic injuries.
Can I interrupt right in there? Yeah, so Stefan, actually one of the questions is that they want to know, Kamal, I hope I said his name or her name correctly, wants to know, is this as flexible, is the Feldenkrais work as flexible as the yoga asanas are? They're allowed a lot of flexibility in how they use asanas. And they also want to understand a little bit about the therapeutic applications.
Well, I think if you look at yoga, I think it's a bit different. I mean, I teach yoga teachers and I teach yoga therapists. I'm part of the educational process there. And we work on something at a completely different level, I think. if you work with yoga teachers, they get really hooked to doing their sequence and doing the postures a certain way. And it's very, very useful how they tie a sequence together, but they look at it differently and they get stuck in their own habits. And you try to change the sequence sometimes for a yoga teacher, they get really upset with you if you don't tell them to turn the foot one way or another. What's interesting in the yoga community is turning towards somatic education, variations and so forth. They're after what we are doing now because they feel like they see too many injuries in the yoga world. So it's different, it's a different flexibility. The beauty of yoga is I can take a yoga class, an asana class, and I can say it was stretching or strengthening, and people have a scaffolding for that. But to enhance yoga, the Feldenkrais method is really important, I think. What was the second question?
How is it being used therapeutically? How does the work?
Therapeutically, we see it being used in both orthopedics and neurological issues quite a bit. And again, they're looking at it more and more from a nervous system perspective about how people can learn and how people are learning new movements and so forth. And they realize, especially when we deal with arthritis and a lot of the wear and tear injuries, and even when we're dealing with chronic pain today, that it's changing the person's movement habits. So again, the rehab personnel is really, really interested in this, and they're moving towards us, but they don't have the understanding in the background yet on how to tie movements together to make it coherent to the nervous system.
Thank you.
We have a huge role to play there and to teach people.
Thanks. Krish, somebody was asking about a good book on Dr. Feldenkrais's life.
There's a beautiful, great big fat book. It's about this fat, and it's the definitive biography of Feldenkrais, written by Mark Rees, edited by Carol Kress, and that is a book that
it's called A Life in Movement.
It's a beautiful book, really it is.
Yeah, A Life in Movement. And I have to tell you, I think it is one that's hard to put down. I found that book, I have never said this about a Feldenkrais book before. I found that book to be a page turner. A page turner, I'm telling you. Most of everything else I've read under the Feldenkrais world, I have to work at a little bit. I mean, I find it interesting, but that book is a page turner. Yeah. What an incredible life. Yeah, so. Yes, so also, Chris, people are loving your definition of the method. Do you think you can say that definition again for people?
Oh, sure. I just came up with the whole thing last night when I was lying thinking, let me see if I can find it again here.
That's fine.
I want to make sure I say it the same way twice. So, okay. So Feldenkrais is an embodied process of learning through movement with awareness, leading to improvement of the self-image, coordination, and action. It's a little long, but it sort of says a lot.
Thank you. And I had another question here. I found it and I lost it.
I have more to say about the book if you would like, but
people are wanting to know if they can pre-order it.
Good.
I want to know if they can pre-order. So that's good. I think people are very interested in it.
We have a discount code, Cynthia, don't we, for a pre-order with a 10% discount?
We're going to put that on the website.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good. Great.
Yeah, for the pre-order. So you'll see that a little bit later after the replay is completely up, and we'll post that information there as well. And and then people are asking questions like, do you think there'll be a chance to do bulk orders? There's people are excited about it. That's fantastic. It's fantastic. And there's a question from Claire. Is there a chapter on Feldenkrais and psychological trauma and the current neuroscience around trauma?
Yes. Donna Ray wrote a chapter called Trauma, Stress, and Anxiety. She, of course, as many of you know, works with Dan Siegel, and there's case studies in that chapter. So there's a lot. And you know, again, throughout all of the chapters, there are many case studies, and we're always looking at trauma. I mean, what could be more relevant, right, than trauma and stress right now? And so, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. What do you see as the future of somatic therapies in light of all the therapy sessions that are happening online, aka telehealth?
Well, I think that I'd like to talk more about the future just of the Feldenkrais method, because in a sense, it's a sort of a beacon in many ways for other somatic systems. But I think that there's so many opportunities to learn more about these methods online now. There's so many more opportunities for us to promote, even in these difficult times, so many practitioners are actually teaching online, so that the possibilities are enormous. I have to say that maybe Feldenkrais's dream of beaming his lessons across the planet with Telstar technology have come to, really because of you, Cynthia, are coming true. I mean, it's pretty exciting. And we think that this method, as well as other methods, are going to continue to thrive, because it is all about our life and the embodiment of how resilient and how, as Mr. Feldenkrais Stefan said earlier, how robust and the biological fitness. And I want to just mention a quote from Candy Conino, because I love what she said. The Feldenkrais method, and other methods of course is true, will carry on into the future because it can handle any and all changes. As practitioner assistant trainer, I've thrown every challenge I can discover or invent at this work. It does not disappoint or fall short. And I think this can be true particularly of Feldenkrais, but of course many other somatic education systems.
And I think that the whole COVID virus has really speeded up everyone moving to telehealth. So we're learning. I mean, I've been teaching online to my university students for 7 weeks now, so I'm a little zoomed out. But it's going to speed everything up. But also know that there might also be a big movement towards in-person too, because people might realize that the one-on-one connection is more important than ever. So I think we will see a good mixture of it, of telehealth and one-on-one. We'll see, and we will learn. We will learn as we go along.
Thank you very much. So, one thing that a couple people have said, we actually don't know what is ATM, awareness through movement, and functional integration, which is sometimes shortcut in our world as FI. Could you say just something briefly to get people started with these ideas of awareness through movement and the other arm of functional integration?
Sure. So awareness through movement is the group class situation where we're in a group and the Feldenkrais practitioner leads you through movements. They lead not by demonstrating, but in fact, most of them are done lying on the floor so that we're not really distracted by anything and we can be in our most quiet place. So they're group classes, awareness through movement. And the individual sessions, the one-on-one sessions, are called functional integration, where you lie on a table fully clothed and the practitioner helps you discover new movement possibilities through very gentle touch and suggestion, and often coaches you also in small movement sequences. So that's, of course, you should all get Moshe's book, Awareness Through Movement, which is a lovely, relatively easy to follow book, but it's a kind of a primer for learning about the method.
Yeah, thank you very much. That's helpful. Do you want to add anything at all to that, Stefan?
No, she did a very good job with that.
Okay. Why hasn't the Feldenkrais method caught on the way yoga and mindful meditation has in the medical alternative medicine community and in the physical education programs in schools?
Yoga get kind of lucky, I guess, in a way, in that very famous people went out and said that they were doing it, right? We also have to realize that yoga is a lot older. It's had more time to develop. That the Feldenkrais is still fairly young. We have to realize that. And the meditation, the mindfulness, again, it came from a long background. And so there was more science, there was more research on some of these things. And it came up earlier. I think I'll come back to that. We didn't quite have the languaging, and people didn't understand. In yoga, I can tie it into stretching and strengthening. The Feldenkrais method, I can't. So we needed to find a different language, a different word, and that has been hard for us. I think we got it now if we start using some of these ideas, and I think people will get it. You know, and you know, there's also a spiritual background in yoga. There's you know, it's built on different levels of writing. So I think there are lots of reasons why it has not taken off to the same extent. I think the time is now for it to do it, and I think we're going to see a lot of growth because we can talk about mindfulness. We can talk about, you know, depending on how we define spirituality in the Feldenkrais level too, right? So I think we're getting there, but maybe we're a few years behind.
Anthony was kind of interested in your use of the term robustness and biological fitness, those terms, and he asked, would this become the jargon for the general public?
If you ask me, yes. But I'm only one person. I think to me, it's something that people will probably understand. They'll understand robustness, right?
Yeah.
And fitness, they understand. So if you add biological to that, at least they have the fitness part to hang on to. And then we can combine that. So to me, that's something that we can build this scaffolding on. But it's really up to the practitioners to decide that.
Thank you. So what was your biggest aha moment in the book, or the biggest surprise that came, something, or even something weird you learned about Moshe, perhaps? This is from Chris.
Good question. I think we were certainly surprised that it was way more of a huge project than we ever expected. I mean, we never could imagine that it could have been so much work, so many hours, and take so much time. But, you know, I think also we were really so privileged to be able to meet all the different contributors. I mean, Jerry Carson wrote the foreword, you know, we got to talk to him. There's so many giants in our field that we got to know on a lovely personal level, and some that we didn't know that turned out, you know, Paul Pui-Roli, who's a dancer who's presented at the Kennedy Center, he wrote a chapter on dance. So to get to know him was pretty exciting as well. So there are many opportunities. And I think probably in the summit, you're going to get even more opportunities to really appreciate who some of these people are and their brilliant thinking and work.
Thank you. Alan asks, explain the neural drive in your method, please.
Neural drive. What does Alan mean by the neural drive?
Yeah, Alan, can you say something more about that? I'm going to go on and we'll come back to it. So he can give us a little bit of a definition of that. Stefan, have you dropped all the techniques learned from physical therapy which don't resonate with the Feldenkrais practice in your therapeutic practice, especially within the orthopedic realm?
No, I have not. We have to recognize that there's a time for everything, and customers have an expectation, and I need to meet them there. If their expectation is that I will do, you know, what they expect a physical therapist to do, I start there, and I'll move into the whole awareness aspect, the movement aspect. But I can't start there because then I lose the client. So you always have to start where the client is. Then, of course, the way I think about it, no matter how I say it, is influenced by my Feldenkrais background and the way I think about how I connect the movement. But I have to start where the client is. And a lot of them need basic strengthening so that they can start build up some awareness and options on movement.
Thank you. Have there been studies to evaluate the scientific efficacy, I'll put in that word, efficacy of the Feldenkrais method? And if not, why not?
There have been a lot of studies actually, but not nearly enough. A lot of research has been done. In fact, the Feldenkrais Guild has a whole research arm. It's a whole separate organization that funds research. And for example, Dr. Pat Buchanan has done tremendous research, many other people. And there have been studies, but speaking of robust, they're still not robust enough. We need more studies. They're really relatively few, but it's also difficult to quantify, right? What kinds of criteria do you really use? So, you know, creativity, the use of the brain in skillful ways, dealing with trauma. Those are not criteria that you can necessarily measure. So it is a challenge for sure. And people always ask us, well, where are the studies? And there are studies. I mean, there's some classical ones that, you know, use lengthening the hamstring study is a very classical one. And if you go online, you can study, you can learn more about the lengthening the hamstrings using Feldenkrais as opposed to stretching. So.
And I think we need to look at other fields. We need to look at a bigger research or scientific background, and we can be scientifically informed, even if it doesn't say it's the Feldenkrais method, but we need to think about the science behind some of the things that we are doing. You know, and let's face it, a lot of research too is money driven. And the Feldenkrais method is not big enough at this point to really get a lot of grants and so forth for bigger studies. So the studies are fairly small.
Alan clarified for us, he says the neural, I think, I can't remember what the original way he used, neural system, the method which primes the integrated neural system activation for neural potentiation.
That's good to me.
Sounds good to you? Is that what you said?
I really do. Sorry, Alan, I really don't know, but I think if we talk about, I think if you set up an awareness through movement or a sequence right, there will be, if I understand you right, the neural system will develop, and new functions will emerge. But I think if we do variations of movements and so forth without any kind of connection, just variations for the sake of variations, I think the nervous system is not going to drive towards a new function or towards an enhancement of what we are doing. So again, I think it's how we set that up to allow that neural drive, evolution, development, or whatever it is that we want to call it. But it has to be set up in a way that is coherent for the nervous system.
And using, of course, imagination, because when we use our imagination, we imagine a movement, the brain is doing it. Whether we're actually doing the movement or not, the neural pathways are being created, and this, of course, is neuroplasticity. So we do use the imagination a lot, if that, in a way, contributes perhaps to your understanding. But you should just do it. Just go do an awareness through movement lesson, and you'll have lots of opportunities in the next 10 days.
Yes, thank you. Someone wrote, what's a good book to read for my knee issue? There is no good book to read for your knee issue. I'll tell you, do the Feldenkrais awareness through movement lessons. You will be shocked at what happens if you do lessons related to the chest and the thorax and the ribs, and how much improvement you can get in your knee. You'll be shocked if you do lessons related to hip and ankle and low back, how much improvement you will get in your knee. So, you know, it's the reading about it is important because we're a culture of readers, aren't we? Yep. But the doing of it, the actual inquiry, which you said Chris, you said this, we inquire into our experience. What a statement. I think that's really important. Someone asked, do you see any correlation to the McKinsey methods? I'm sure that's for you, Stefan.
I think the McKinsey method, and for the ones that you don't know, it's used for spinal issues mostly. I think the McKinsey method that talks about the disc being moved and so forth, I mean, there had some theories on it. I think the McKinsey method is really, really good because it encourages awareness throughout the spine and movement throughout the spine. And therefore, there's less movement in any one vertebra. And I think the Feldenkrais method kind of goes the same way. Now, the weakness of the McKinsey method is it's very extension driven, which is okay. But McKinsey method is very narrow. It's for a specific kind of problem that you evaluate, and it's really not for anything else. The Feldenkrais method is so much bigger than that. Having said that, I use the McKinsey method for some of my patients, and it works.
Yeah. There was a question about dementia. Have you been seeing the Feldenkrais work used for people with dementia? And is there any particular lessons that you would recommend or a book?
Certainly, any kinds of neurological diseases are very much helped, Parkinson's, dementia, Alzheimer's. But it really, again, I'm sorry, the answer always is you've got to do the work. There's not one specific lesson that could lead to, oh, this is going to cure or fix this, because it's not a fixing method. It's a method of awareness, and it becomes self-referential. So we all work with people that have some levels of dementia, that have Parkinson's, that have other MS, but that in the end, we work in that with the same kinds of principles. The same principles based much on physics as well, and that we don't try to be prescriptive in this method. So I'd love to say, yes, go and do Alexandria 9, number 429, and your dementia will, but if you do a lot of lessons and you do them every day, you'll be amazed, you'll be astonished at how you will improve.
I would like to read the study, so I'll just answer that one. You can go to Feldenkrais.com, Feldenkrais.com. That is the site for general public, and it also has links to research papers as well as the International Federation for Feldenkrais. The IFF also has some incredible links. So there's a lot of people, several places that these bodies of work around our research have been compiled that you can grab onto. One of the questions was, is there any functional MRI studies done for the Feldenkrais method? We actually do have at least one of those by Dave Clark. It was a couple of years, maybe 4 or 5 years ago now, right? It was studying how the intention of the practitioner travels or gets activated in the brain. So whether the practitioner thinks locally when they're touching someone's foot, or whether they think about the entire system when they touch someone's foot, what happens. So that was one of our few functional MRI studies, as I recall. I don't think there's been any others, but maybe I'm wrong about
but
that.
Again, we can go to other fields there. I mean, they thought that meditation, it would take years for changes in the brain, right? Now we know that they happen really, really quickly. So we have so many studies in other areas that show that changes in the brain happens extremely quickly, and there's no reason to think that they wouldn't do the same with the Feldenkrais method.
Thank you. So, and last year's summit, for those of you who have access to last year's summit, or if you want to purchase last year's summit, you can let us know. We did a lot with research in last year's summit. It was last year's summit had a more, I would say, a little bit more of a professional aim to it than this year's does. So you might find some of those answers in that last year's summit. Besides your summit, what outreach methods in the Feldenkrais community try to reach the general public and social influencers? Yeah, well, I have to tell you, I think we're weak on that area. That's not where, as an organization, we've been able to put our time effectively. So as far as I know, there isn't a lot happening in that way. Do you all know something I don't know?
Nope.
I personally don't, and I see Stefan shaking his head. I do think that really this is what's happening right now is going to be the big influencer. This summit, us teaching online, sharing via Facebook and Twitter, it is important to share. There's no question, because people do look at Twitter and Facebook and their other social media, Instagram, and there are many people in our community that have been extremely powerful in sharing. And it's got to have, Mary Beth Smith is a perfect example. I know she's one of the people that helped you also. She's so good at really promoting the message everywhere. So yeah, but yeah, you're right. We're a little bit weak in that department.
We're a little weak, but we're also, I mean, I want to say in our defense that, you know, we're a little bit on the small side, and you do need a certain level of size of practitioners in order to have an organizational body that you can structure and have enough money out of to do a lot of these things. So I think our time is coming. If I didn't think that, of course, I wouldn't be doing this. But I'm not also personally, even though I do this to reach people, I'm not overly attached anymore to volume or size. You'd be surprised that you would think I would be, but I'm really more attached to reaching the people in my sphere, in my world, and it being a quality connection. do you have any, well, so are there podcasts and YouTube videos about the Feldenkrais method? Oh my gosh. I mean, I have some incredible things in my own channel, which you wouldn't be able to get to right now because we've kind of narrowed the channel down on Future Life Now for a variety of reasons. But after the summit is over, you can check our channel, Future Life Now. There is, I mean, there's just thousands of videos out there now of lessons. They're not maybe always full-length lessons, or they may not be organized, but you could probably put in the word, for the person who asked about knee, you could probably put in the word Feldenkrais knee in YouTube, and you're going to get some options. So start checking them out. We do have someone who has a podcast going. And I'm so sorry, Christina, you're even on the panel and your last name is just like garbled in my head right now with something like COM, and then I'm lost. But there is one as well. She's supposed to be in the panel on essential Feldenkrais, and you can hear about her podcast then as well. Could you share a reference book on the Feldenkrais method for dancers? Now, I know Nancy Wolinski has written so many articles. This is from Supriya Babar. She's written so many articles on dancing. So maybe just even querying that on Google would be a good idea. But I don't know of any books. Do you all know of one?
I don't think there are any books specifically on dancers and the Feldenkrais method. There was one book I read that really deals with the somatics and dance, but you know, my office is closed down at the school. I can't even access it. But you know, if someone contacts me, I can come up with that name. I just cannot remember the name of it right now. But it's a phenomenal book about the whole somatic aspect of dance.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Krish, how do you relate acting, the actor, the actress, and Feldenkrais?
Oh gosh. Well, first of all, there's a beautiful chapter in the book by Thomas Kampe, who writes about Feldenkrais and working with actors. I myself also use as warm-ups, as ways of getting the actor's attention. And as a director, I'm always looking at how are people embodying themselves when they're on stage, and what are the tiny little cues that give everything away in our way of expressing ourselves. So I think the field is largely actually untapped. People tend to do Alexander technique with actors, but I think that is somewhere where we can really shoot into the future is Feldenkrais and theater. Very exciting.
And I think there is a Victoria Worsley actually was in your panel with you last year, wasn't she? Yeah. I forgot. I had a little moment, had a little lapse. She has a book out on actors. This is actually very, very good.
Fantastic. It's fantastic.
It's a very good book. So I know that Jim Stevens, one of our leaders in the research area, is over in the chat posting some links to some research studies for people. Thank you so much for Jim for doing that. And Tim Sobe, who has also his doctorate and is a physical therapist, posted in our section. If Tim, you could post that in for the rest of the group, his study that came out, I don't know what year it was, but for chronic low back pain, a randomized controlled study. So thank you so much for pointing that out. It was just out last October, so it's very recent, so that's good. And you know, yes, it would be great if we connected with the New York Times. Jane Brody mentioned us about 3 years ago, maybe in the New York Times, and wow, did we see a huge amount of people coming out of the woodwork checking out Feldenkrais because of that. Let's see here. Is there anything that we know of on studies for improvement of ataxia with Feldenkrais method? I'm not familiar with anything on that.
No, I haven't seen any studies on that. I did a project on using Feldenkrais and Feldenkrais inspired movements with some Parkinson's, but I never published it because I just didn't have the time. So it's not, if I look at Parkinson's, it's not going to cure it, but it will probably slow down the progression some. And I think the same with ataxia, depending on what the cause is there. We can probably slow down progression a lot. that's a hard thing to prove in research studies too, because then, you know, who is the control group here, and how do we know that it wouldn't be slowed down anyway? So a lot of studies on things like that deals as much with quality of life as it does with just focusing on the ataxia per se.
Could you perhaps say something about how Feldenkrais method is different from the ubiquitous core exercises?
Well, the Feldenkrais method is about more than core exercises. Core exercises has been way too standardized, basically ever since Pilates and in the rehab world, Dr. White in San Francisco in the 80s developed these programs, and it tends to be very step by step. Don't do this until you know how to do that, and then step on, and it's just step by step. It's very coordinated if you want to do core exercises in the correct way, especially in the rehab world. Feldenkrais method looks more at how do I integrate the core into my movement and everything else? How do I get there's a movement intelligence. Sometimes core exercises just isolates the core and don't really care about anything else, or how do you take it into the real world here? So I think there's a huge difference in that we incorporate it. So we might not get the six-pack, but we are more functional, and we become stronger, even though we don't focus necessarily on the core as much.
Mm-hmm. As an organization, what are you doing not to be absorbed into the Massage Association umbrella and protect practitioners? Actually, we're very active in that way. This is one of the things our organization is quite good at. It's part of the SMETA, I think is how the somatic education larger umbrella, and they work very tirelessly to make sure that it's clear that the Feldenkrais method is a very different approach than massage and does not belong as being licensed by the medical board. So I'll just answer that one for myself. Could you say something about how the method is being used to improve eyesight?
Oh, wow, yeah. I think well, first of all, it's not just doing eye exercises, but really the Feldenkrais method altogether, doing awareness through movement lessons almost always improves eyesight. But there have been some fantastic programs, one of them notably by David Weber, who is sadly deceased, but you can still find him, I think, at Feldenkrais Access, some recordings from there. You know, again, the idea of slowing down, paying attention, using our entire body to pay attention is, I mean, my eyesight has improved tremendously. My hearing has improved, especially in the last couple of years. I don't know how, but I've been doing a lot more awareness through movement. So, you know, that's not one panacea and one lesson, but it is really being in this process of self-inquiry, of self-awareness, and moving with the brain's attention. We can do movements, exercises, but when we pay attention, when we really pay attention, it changes everything in the brain, including the ocular nerves, of course.
Thank you.
Go ahead. Can I just come back a little bit to the whole thing about massage? I worked with the Guild in both Arkansas and Iowa years ago on legislating because they love to put us with massage therapy. And it's up to each and every one of you who are practitioners to let the Guild know what is going on legislatively in your state. Now, right now, there are issues in Massachusetts and other states, but it's hard for the Guild to keep track. It's up to every practitioner to know what is going on with the legislation, because we're a little bit threatened, and it could be that they say you need another license to touch these days. So please keep an eye out and let the Guild know what is going on in your state. Thank
you. And thank you, Donna, for pointing out that my name for the woman who has written so much on dance in articles is Nancy, Galeota Wosny, Wosny. I knew it was Nancy W, but that's about all I had in my head. And I'm just scrolling to make sure there's nothing else. I'm going to probably finish with this one. And do you have success with scoliosis? And what do you, those two questions. Let's start with that one. Do you have success with scoliosis?
Depends on what you mean success is. You know, success is not straightening out the scoliosis. If you deal with a teenager, it could be make sure it doesn't get worse. If you deal with someone who is, you know, probably beyond their mid-20s or so, where it has a stable scoliosis, it's teaching the person to function with the scoliosis. You're not going to straighten them out. That's not your goal. Your goal is to teach person to function better with the scoliosis. That's a crucial thing. If you work with a teenager that has an unstable scoliosis, you know, just make darn sure you know what you're doing. I would not work with someone, even as a physical therapist, I would be very hesitant to work with a teenager with a developing scoliosis without having a physician refer the person, saying that it's okay, and having the person go to regular checkups to make sure that the curve doesn't increase. And you really need to have a very, very good understanding of how to work with someone with scoliosis. I think it's specialized, and especially if you work those teenage years. Beyond that, it's no different than anybody else. Just teach the person to function. What is it that they're coming to you for? You know, what is the function they can't do? Work with that. The scoliosis is stable at that point. You're not going to straighten it out.
Thank you for that practical answer. And the last one that we're going to take, I've noticed that they never ask about people's injuries in a Feldenkrais method class. And then she went on to ask a little bit later, does Feldenkrais modify their movements for people with injuries?
Well, gosh, I think that we do often ask our students whether there are any injuries because we'd like to know. So I certainly do. I don't try to dwell on it, but if they have injuries, it's good to know, and particularly if we work one-on-one. But, you know, I think the whole thing is, and it really goes back to scoliosis as well, is that, you know, we have limitations, but we learn to move within those limitations. And one thing we don't ever do is address the actual pain or the actual difficulty. So if somebody has a shoulder issue, I'm not going to go and work on their shoulder. I'm probably going to do, as you said earlier, Cynthia, I'm going to think about, are they actually moving their pelvis? Do they know that the pelvis might be an important part of how they are moving their shoulder? So we have to really be careful that when we talk about this work, we're never fixing. We are not fixing a problem. We are just becoming more aware of the connections. Doesn't mean we don't need to know about anatomy. We should all know more about anatomy. Actually, I think it's really incumbent upon all of practitioners to learn anatomy because it's been extraordinarily important, certainly since I've studied with Jeff Haller and the Feldenkrais Training Academy, and their anatomy is really important. We have to know. So, sorry, a roundabout answer, but
yeah, I mean, I think there's many ways that you can help people be aware of their situations. And one of them is to ask about injuries, but one of them is also to help people be responsible and know how to assess when they're in their own danger zone. And this is what I think the Feldenkrais method is particularly good at, is it puts people back in the driver's seat of their own life. And it says, hey, this is how you learn how your body works right now, how your system is connected right now. And then we can see where else it can go, but our work is constantly about respecting the situation that you have now. And you do that by growing your awareness and your sensations. So I do like to keep people in charge of their own lives. I often ask them to tell me if they have anything significant that they think I should know about in order to help monitor for them. But in really large classes, big workshops, that's not possible. I mean, sometimes I've taught really large classes. I have to let that go, and I have to just hope that I do a really great job of instilling that ability to monitor oneself and to ask questions as they need to.
So being in the healthcare field, I'm Mr. Liability. So I do actually, and I know there are sometimes that's really hard to ask. I think if you have, I mean, individual, I think it's a given you'll ask them. But I think if you teach an awareness through movement class and you have a new person attending, you probably should ask something about medical issues and so forth. Not to focus on it, but
Yeah, I don't agree.
I hear it in the yoga world, people say that if I don't ask, I'm not responsible for if they hurt themselves. No, you're always responsible for your clients. And
You are, but you would need to know a lot about every single situation under the sun, and we're not trained in that.
no,
So the trouble is, Stefan, and so I'm going to argue this a bit, is that when you find out information that you don't actually know anything to do with, it's not helpful. And people think you know what to do with it. And really, we're not trained in medical diagnosis, understanding medical process. We're not. That's not what we do. That's
I agree.
not what we do. So.
I totally agree.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough issue. But anyway,
Yep.
I'm going to let us go. I think we could go another hour from people's questions. Oh my gosh, I'm so thrilled. I'm going to hope that the summit answers most of the rest of your questions. We have incredible presentations coming up for you. So just keep tuning in. Keep tuning in. Be patient with us. I'm going to repeat. You have problems, you post them by email to support@futurelifenow.com. Or you go to feldenkrais.summit.com and open a chat window. And our next live session now through all the rest of the days is 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And again, if you would need a time zone converter, use Stefan's home city of New York. And most people know about New York, so a lot of people don't know about Cincinnati, which happens to be the same time zone. And that's where I'm coming to you from, but I'll use New York because everybody knows New York. And it's also a lot easier to spell it, Cincinnati. So those are the things that you can count on from us. We will continue to do live streams every chance that we get, but we would like you to join us live. We have room for 3,000 people to come in and join us live. And you see that we're trying hard to take questions. Anybody who wants to tune out when we get to questions and answers, just leave. You don't have to stay for question and answers. But those of you who want to stay on, we're going to try our best to take as many of them as we reasonably can. But we need you to be here with us in the live broadcast link to do that. Okay? So think about joining us over here. We had 600 and some people here, and I know when I go out and look, we're going to have several thousand watching the stream. I'd like to see more people here. We can handle 3,000 of you here. Also, tomorrow, I'll remind you, if you weren't at the party perhaps, we have a new possibility that arose literally in the last 3 days. Some practitioners got together and they're offering you a 9 a.m. or a 3 p.m., again, Eastern, New York time, 9 a.m. or 3 p.m. opportunity to connect with each other and with the practitioner. In the morning, it's tea time. And you're going to get together in little groups and you're going to have the chance to talk about a question that relates to the movement lessons of the day. So I recommend you do one movement lesson before you come to that. And you could do both, but you certainly do one. The question give you a question that relates the movement lesson to the theme of that day. Okay, so that will help you get a little deeper into your learning that way. And then in the afternoon, we have a how-to session with an experienced practitioner. Up to 1,000 people can join, and they will take questions just like we're taking questions right here. And you can say, hey, I don't know how to be comfortable doing those lessons. There was something in the lesson I couldn't understand. What were they talking about? And they will do their best to answer your questions. They're great practitioners with a lot of experience. So highly recommend you take advantage of that as well. The live sessions will be on the same page that you clicked on the link to get here, the exact same page. So day 1, day 2, tomorrow, can go back or forward as long as it's within the 48 hours. Okay, thank you so much, Stefan. Thank you so much, Krish. Very lovely session. Very lovely session. What a kickoff for us all. So love to you all, and we'll see you back soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.